Welcome to the Onion Buns. So this Saturday we're going to start a new episode, a weekly episode. Some might call it a premiere, some might call it a recap. I'm going to call it Lefties Lying. In Canada we have a real problem with our Liberals, our NDP, and our Green Party, and their aversion to the truth. They tell some whoppers. And they don't seem to understand that in this technological age, when you lie, somebody's going to find out about it. So we have Mark Carney, who's been caught in 5 or 6 different lies just this week alone. But it's not just Carney. Today we're going to focus on Carney, but really it's all of them. You know, even if Carney doesn't get the appointed prime minister, which it looks like 99% of surety that he will, somebody else is going to take his place, and they're going to lie. We've been going through this for a decade, and unfortunately, low information voters who don't do their homework believe the lies. So all anyone can do is point it out and point it out and point it out, and that's what my goal is on these Saturday episodes, is to point out the obvious lies and supply the evidence that they're lying. And hopefully that gets through the heads of some people. We'll see if it works. I don't know if it will. I kind of doubt if it will, to be honest. But anyway, so for our first piece of evidence, we have Pierre Poilievre speaks in Ottawa about Mark Carney. Let's take a listen.
You know, that is exactly what Mark Carney did when he backed down to Donald Trump. On October 26, 2024, Donald Trump threatened tariffs against Canada to take our jobs. 6 days later, Mark Carney announced that Brookfield headquarters would move from Canada to Trump's hometown of New York City, giving Canadian jobs to Americans. And we all know, no matter what the corporate bigwigs tell you, that when the headquarters goes, the jobs and the money will follow soon after.
Okay, this is an important part that Poilievre just said. Carney, as you're going to see, he keeps doubling down that, well, Brookfield still has its corporate headquarters in Toronto, but its asset management division, which is actually where all the jobs are, moved to New York. So it's disingenuous of him. He says Toronto still has the corporate headquarters, and I'm sure it does. It's got 6 or 7 corporate figures there. But all of the jobs went to New York. And all of the Canadians that worked in Toronto were fired. The CBC even asks them directly about this, and they refuse to answer, as you will see. But so that's what Poilievre is talking about, is we know when you move your, in this case, the asset management division to a different country, the jobs go with it. And that's what happened.
Mark Carney did exactly what Trump wanted. He backed down and sold out our country when Canada was under attack. He did it while he was acting as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. When asked why he moved the headquarters out of Canada, he said he had nothing to do with it, that the decision was made after he left the company in January. Yet documents show that the decision was made in October of last year at a meeting that he chaired, where the decision was unanimous, meaning he agreed with it. And then he recommended it in writing to his shareholders. Confronted about his falsehood, he now says he should have been more precise. But here's the thing. He was very precise. He said, and I quote, "The decision, the formal decision of the board, happened after I ceased to be on the board." Again, the decision, the formal decision of the board, happened after I ceased to be on the board. That is a very precise statement. precisely the opposite of the truth. The formal decision happened in October, 3 months before Mark Carney left, and he chaired the meeting.
Okay, this October date is actually very important to keep in mind. Donald Trump was elected in November. So Carney has started to say, well, we made this choice prior to Donald Trump being elected. But anyone who followed the news knows Donald Trump was talking and telling Canadians, I am going to tariff you. I'm going to tariff Mexico. I'm going to tariff China. And if you're smart, all you companies in Canada, move your companies to the United States. Now, this was before he was elected, but the writing was already on the wall that he was going to be elected, contrary to what CNN and MSNBC told you. Everybody knew Trump was going to win that election, and he was telling, before he was elected, that move your companies to the States. And that's exactly what Mark Carney did. He read it, he saw that Trump was going to win, and he got his board to approve it. He was the chairman. As Poilievre said, it was unanimous. That means Mark Carney voted in favor of this as well.
He told this to all of you, the media who are here today. Let's digest that for a second. He sat at that mahogany table, grasping the gavel, and recorded the decision, which he agreed with, to move the headquarters to New York from Canada. And then just the other night, when you asked him about it, he looked all of you in the eye, and he said the board made the decision after he left the company, and he had nothing to do with it.
Again, the decision was made in October. It was finalized. His last act was to finalize that. He even wrote a letter telling all the board to approve this. So it's completely disingenuous of Mark Carney to try to claim that this was somebody else. But this is what the Liberals do. They don't take responsibility for their misdeeds. They always blame somebody else. It's like Trudeau. He elbows a girl in the breast, and when the girl complained, he said, well, I guess she just experienced it differently than me. So it was her fault that he elbowed her in the breast. Not his fault, it was her fault. She was to blame. Damn, she should have got breast reduction so that her breasts weren't in the way. Fuck.
Are you ever going to believe anything he tells you again? Don't you think he should come before you and explain himself? Mark Carney has to come before Canadians and explain. He needs to explain why he lied and why he sold out our country, why he failed to put Canada first when we were under attack. He needs to apologize to Canadians, not only for lying, but for putting his personal profits ahead of our country. Mark Carney put himself first instead of putting Canada first. We need action to protect our country and its people, to take back control of our economic future, and to protect Canadians from greedy corporate executives who would ship our jobs abroad, and to bring home the promise of Canada. We have a common sense plan to do it.
So Poilievre's pretty straightforward about this. Carney is not being straightforward about this. So here we have a CBC. Now, for those of you not in Canada, understand CBC carries water for the Liberals. Their entire existence relies on the Liberals winning the next election. Pierre Poilievre, who you saw in the last clip, has said he will defund the CBC. The CBC currently gets $1.5 billion a year of taxpayer money to do left-wing Liberal propaganda. The Liberals have promised if they are re-elected, they will make that $2.5 billion a year as a thank you to the CBC for carrying their water. So the only time you will ever hear the CBC or CTV or Global hold the Liberals accountable is when the evidence is so overwhelming that they can't avoid it. They want to, but they can't. And even then, as you'll see in not this clip, but the following clip, they will try to minimize the damage. They will go out of their way. I mean, Americans, you see this all the time with MSNBC and CNN. That is what we're dealing with the CBC. So the fact that I'm using a CBC tells you how overwhelming the evidence against Carney is on this topic.
I know how to build strong economies.
Mark Carney's business background is his main selling point in his Liberal leadership campaign.
Okay, this is also a false narrative. Carney was in charge of the UK. The UK, their last Prime Minister, multiple members of Parliament have all come out and said, do not let this man control your finances. Do not let him become the Prime Minister. They have written warning after warning after warning about the damage that he does. So for him to claim that he knows how to do it, it's not true.
Now it's being used against him.
I was chair of Brookfield Asset Management.
Carney was asked about his role in the decision to move the multi-billion-dollar investment firm's headquarters from Toronto to New York.
The formal decision of the board, happened after I ceased to be on the board.
False.
Conservatives say that's not true.
He's demonstrably lied to Canadians.
Brookfield Asset Management announced plans to move its headquarters in October, a move intended to entice more Americans to invest.
There is great access to capital in Toronto, but increasingly there's more money south of the border.
Mark Carney wrote to shareholders in December, saying the board unanimously recommends that shareholders vote for the arrangement resolution at the meeting. He resigned.
See, he wrote the letter. You just saw the letter. You just saw his signature, yet he's still lying to you.
From the board in mid-January to launch his campaign. By then, the move was all but finalized.
Signed by Mark Carney.
Conservatives say it shows Carney isn't serious about protecting Canadian business, targeted by Donald Trump.
He hadn't even taken office, but he had threatened Canada with unjustified and unjust tariffs.
But Brookfield says Canadian operations are not affected, and its parent company remains based in Toronto.
At the end,
again, as I said before, yes, Brookfield still exists in Toronto, but it's just a handful of corporate figures. The asset management and all of the jobs went to New York. It's grossly unthinkable that Carney and the Liberals are trying to tell you that moving all those jobs over there did not affect Canadian jobs. The CBC even asked him in the next clip after this, they asked him point blank, were any jobs affected? And they refused to answer, which is an answer in itself.
Conservatives are calling for Carney to divulge all of his financial assets, even though he's not forced to.
Okay, here's the other problem with Carney. And this alone should get him disqualified from the Prime Minister, in my opinion. In Canada, anyone running for Prime Minister must disclose their financial dealings and conflicts of interest. But Carney is refusing to do that. He is using a sneaky little sidestep where he's saying, well, I'm running to be the leader of the Liberals. I'm not running to be the Prime Minister. But Trudeau's resigning, so the Liberal leader automatically becomes the Prime Minister. So it's word salad. Now, here's the sneaky part. If he calls an election within the first, say, couple weeks after taking office, and he follows the law and submits all his financial records and conflicts, they're not going to get vetted in time for the election. So there is a better than 100% chance, really. It's guaranteed that we will go to the polls electing the next Prime Minister in a federal election before Mark Carney's financial interests and conflicts of interest are exposed officially. And we know there is conflicts of interest. We know this. He's been caught in so many lies that this all has been unofficially researched. So we know there's conflicts, but he's going to bypass that and try to become the Prime Minister of Canada for the next 4 years without ever exposing this. Now think of this. Donald Trump did kind of the same thing in his first election. Like, the US laws are different than Canada's. Canada's are more direct in this regard. And the Democrats and the Liberals in Canada, they lost their fucking minds that Trump was doing this. And they called him every word in the book. Yet none of them are saying boo about Carney doing the exact same thing. Not a one of them. Hypocrites, that's all they are.
Because he's not elected.
It's now more important than ever.
Mark Carney has said he'll comply with the law if he's elected. His campaign issued a statement saying Conservatives are afraid of him and are misrepresenting his business experience. But the statement didn't specifically address accusations that he lied. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
All right, here we go with the third clip. This is another CBC News broadcast. And again, CBC is the propaganda wing of the Liberal Party. This guy, you will hear, try to downplay it multiple times. But he's very careful to not get himself in trouble when he does that. So he only goes so far. But if you're paying attention, he does try to minimize what's being exposed about Carney.
The opposition Conservatives say Mark Carney is lying about his role in the relocation of a major Canadian company's head office to the United States. Brookfield Assets Management moved its headquarters to New York to expand its opportunities in the U.S. Carney was the chair of that company until he resigned to seek the Liberal leadership. Carney insisted the move was approved after he left the company, but the timeline and the paper trail show that Carney played a key role in the relocation before his jump to politics. The CBC's JP Tasker joins us now to walk us through this particular controversy. So JP, a lot of complex components to this. Help us explain this. Why the controversy here?
So complex. He lied. Doesn't seem complex to me. Just say it. He lied. He's a liar. He's a both pathological liar. See? Simple.
Yeah, so Mark Carney, of course, as you know, helped steer two G7 economies through some turbulent times, and he got a lot of praise for his work doing that. But beyond...
Okay, no, he didn't. He claimed to help Martin balance the budget, but he wasn't in the country. He had no ties to the Martin government. He didn't have ties to the Martin government until, I'd have to look it up, but I want to say 4 years after the budget was balanced by Chrétien. So no, he didn't have that. He's claimed to have helped Harper through the worldwide economic crisis, but no, that was Jim Flaherty. Harper came out with a scathing rebuttal of Carney making these false claims. So this is just the CBC giving him credit where he doesn't have any credit. And again, the UK has said, do not elect this guy. Like, just don't elect him. He is a disaster.
Beyond praise, he got some job offers, and that included chairman of the board of Brookfield Asset Management, one of the country's largest investment firms that has a lot of money tied up in infrastructure, in green climate-related investments, a lot of real estate, and he's now facing some...
Okay, green climate investment. Mark Carney made millions selling U.S. coal to China. He made millions building pipelines for Saudi Arabia. During this time, he was doing that. He was passing legislation with Justin Trudeau in Canada because he's been in politics for 5 years. Contrary to what these guys keep trying to suggest that he's new to politics, he's been in politics behind the scenes for 5 years now. In Canada, he pushed the net zero, which basically stopped any pipeline production in Canada. He passed the legislations and policies that basically banned coal production in Canada. So he's making millions in the US and in Saudi off coal and pipelines, but in Canada he says, no, we're not allowed to have them. And now, because as you see, everyone's so mad at Trump And for good reason, the tariffs are ridiculous. But everyone's so mad at Trump. But the real reason we are being hurt by Trump is because we don't have pipelines going from the east to the west to get our oil and gas to ports to get them over to Europe. We just don't, because Carney blocked them with Justin Trudeau. So it just ticks me off. It's like these guys won't tell you the whole story.
Some scrutiny for some of the decisions that the board took when he was chairman of that company, including the board's decision to move the company's head office from Toronto to New York. A move that was made, the company says, because they wanted to have more access to U.S. capital, to American investors. They felt the best way to expand their operations was being based in New York. Carney was asked about that move last night. Here's what he said about his role.
I was chair of Brookfield Asset Management. I ceased to be chair on the 15th, I think, of January, when I announced for leadership. The formal decision of the board, happened after I ceased to be on the board.
Bold place
do not
lie.
have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management. No longer have a role, obviously, as I resigned in the middle of January.
But we have company documents that were filed in October that show the board made the decision to move the head office from Toronto to New York in October of last year. And they released a statement to their investors at the time, and it reads pretty definitively, Brookfield Asset Management has now changed its head office to New York, dated October 31st, not in January, as Carney suggested in that clip. That's led the Conservatives to accuse Carney of misleading Canadians about his role in moving this office. Have a listen to Michael Barrett. He's the Conservative Party's ethics critic.
Last night, Mark Carney lied to Canadians. Donald Trump asked companies to move to the United States. And what was the response from Mark Carney? It was to immediately support and to his board unanimously voting to move their headquarters from Canada to New York City, not standing up to Donald Trump, not protecting Canadian interests, Canadian investment, Canadian jobs, not even modeling good behavior.
The Carney campaign has released a statement since the Conservatives were out on that. They do not, though, address the disparity in the office move timelines, but we can bring you a bit of what they're telling us this afternoon. Let's put it up on the screen for our viewers so we can show them this. They say Pierre Poilievre is scared of...
Okay, Pierre Poilievre is scared of running against Mark Carney. What a load of crap. There is 4 pollsters. They are all paid by the Liberal Party. They have collected hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars from the Liberal Party. Those 4 pollsters say the race is neck and neck, or even one of them even has the Liberals in the lead. Then there's 15 other independent pollsters who don't get cash handouts of taxpayer money from the Liberals. All of them have the Conservatives ahead 10 to 15 points. So who do you believe? Do you believe the pollsters that were paid by the Liberals to find positive Liberal results? Or do you believe the independent pollsters that have no ties to any political party and are just, they make their money from accurate polling? I'm going to go with the later myself.
Running against Mark Carney, and he's desperate to misrepresent Mark's serious experience in business because he has no economic experience whatsoever. Brookfield Asset Management remains one of the largest investors in Canada. It continues to list on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and its parent company, Brookfield Corp, continues to be headquartered in Toronto. So the parent company is still in Toronto, David, but the asset management division, that has moved to New York, and that happened on Carney's watch.
Okay, so the moves happened prior to him getting into politics, and the move happened prior to Donald Trump getting elected.
Okay, see, he's trying to spin it. The moves did not happen prior to him getting into politics. He has been Justin Trudeau's financial advisor for the Liberal Party for the last 5 years. To me, that is a political position. It's not a voluntary position. He was paid for this. That makes him an employee of the Liberal Party, which means he was in politics.
despite Trump being mentioned in all of this, to get access to these U.S. indexes. Beyond this being a paper transaction of a corporate headquarters relocation, why does this matter? What are the implications for jobs, for Canadian tax revenue? What's the bottom line here?
Well, it's prestigious for Canada to have the head office of a major firm like this. You know, Brookfield is a point of pride for Canada. It's a major corporation. All of its various divisions represent about 10% of the Toronto Stock Exchange. So it's a loss for Canadian business and corporate Canada for this office to be moved to New York. They're suggesting that they'll have more success by being stateside. But in terms of the practical implications of this, David, it's not entirely clear, because when Brookfield Asset Management announced these changes back in October, they said that there would be no meaningful effect on its operations. Now, we asked the corporation today, does that mean there were no job losses as a result? You say there was no meaningful changes to the corporate operations, but does that mean anybody lost their job? And that is not clear, because Brookfield is not getting back to us. They have not responded to any of our requests for comments. You mentioned taxes. There is the possibility that this could have some tax implications as well, although it's not entirely clear. We did speak to one expert today who watches the stock market, who watches Brookfield and other companies and familiar with these sort of transactions, and he says it's a possibility that there are tax implications, that perhaps they will pay American taxes, pay less taxes in this country, but he doesn't have an inside look on it, and Brookfield's not getting back to us, so we can't say definitively one way or the other.
Brookfield's not getting back to them. Brookfield is not getting back to the very media outlet they pay to propaganda for him. I mean, that really does say it all. If they're scared to answer to these guys, they're definitely not going to answer to actual legitimate, non-partisan, non-biased media. So, yeah, I mean, that speaks volumes right there, in my opinion. Okay, so this one is amazing. I did not expect this one. The NDP is going after Mark Carney. The NDP, for those that don't know, has been propping up the Trudeau government for the last 4 years, or 3.5 years. Jagmeet Singh, he wanted his pension so badly that he didn't care what Trudeau was doing to Canada, and Trudeau was hurting Canada, make no mistake about it. But he didn't care. The NDP they voted in favor of the Liberals every single time, no matter what devastation it did to Canada. So it's amazing to me that even the NDP are now calling out Carney, because, again, when you hit a certain point where it becomes so obvious, the corruption and the lies, you got no other choice. And that's what's happening here. I also want to mention, this is off of the Elev8 Podcast. I love this podcast. There's 2 Canadian podcasts I watch for political coverage. Elev8 and Moose on the Loose. And I'll link both of them into the description of the video. But I advise everybody to take a look at his podcast. He does a fantastic job covering Canadian politics on a daily basis. I do a more opinionated, backed up by facts like this. Him and Moose on the Loose, they just burrow into the facts. Like, you want facts, they got facts, and they'll hammer you with facts. You know, I know a lot of left-wingers will not want to see that because facts get in the way of their ideology. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about his podcast. I was really quite surprised by it. So anyway, this is the NDP calling out Mark Carney.
The person who has been touted as having the solutions to our economic challenges. And yet Mark Carney is very much the poster person for the broken system, the hollowing out of Canada that has made us so vulnerable today. Mark Carney has a clear track record of pushing for wealth accumulation for the rich at the expense of workers and Canadian communities. A 2023 report from the Centre for International Corporate Tax Accountability and Research called Brookfield Canada's top tax dodger. In 2021, Brookfield Asset Management dodged a jaw-dropping $6.5 billion all on its own, according to Canadians for Tax Fairness. In 2021 alone, Canada lost $30 billion in corporate tax revenue to offshore havens. This means that 1 in 5 of all the tax dollars corporations diverted from the Canadian public came from Brookfield alone. This is obscene, and Canadians are paying the price.
This is obscene.
Today, we in the NDP are calling on Mark Carney to come clean about his role in Brookfield's exploitative practices. Did he help Brookfield dodge taxes? Canadians deserve to know.
Canadians deserve to know. Nikki, I'm right there with you, sister. What a statement. Hits the facts, hits the issues, all the things that the Conservatives have been doing and been trying to bring issue to. She did it all in that minute and a half. Mark Carney's not who you think he is. He's actually helped the likes of Brookfield divert tax dollars away from Canada. He has hollowed out the economy here in this country. He has helped do it. He is not who he says he is. And I got to tell you, here, NDP, Nikki Ashton, this is crazy. I did not see that coming today.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming either. That was very surprising. As I said, the NDP they've been propping up the Liberals. The only reason Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are even in power today is because of Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. So I guess a part of this is because Carney has jumped or has assumed some of their polling numbers. You know, everyone keeps saying that the Conservatives are neck and neck, as I've explained. That's just those 4 pollsters. But if you dig into those numbers, Carney hasn't really hurt Poilievre. He's hurt Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. They are dangerously close now to not having official party status if an election was called tomorrow. So I guess they're fighting back, saying, you know, we're going to expose you because we want our voters back. So, I mean, I have no love for the NDP. I am not a socialist. I will never be a socialist. But, hey, if you can get some of those votes back and split the vote, all the power to you. So, hey, we got this Goldie that just got posted on Facebook. I'd almost missed it, so I'm cutting it into the video. But this is Carney lying. I listen to his own words.
I would say as well, our economy is stronger than the American economy in the medium term. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. So our economy was weak before we got to the point, and I would say as well, our economy is stronger than the American economy in the medium term. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength.
So February 25th, 2025, he's saying this about how weak our economy is.
Of our economy. So our economy was weak before we got to the point.
But just a week later, here he is saying this about our economy.
And I would say as well, our economy is stronger than the American economy in the medium term. I want to be clear about the...
You can't make this stuff up. This guy has an absolute aversion to the truth, and he will tell you whatever he thinks you want to hear. And he's betting, and he's losing this bet, but he's betting that nobody is going to call him on it. And the internet, and in this case Pierre Poilievre, is calling him on it. And you know what's going to happen tomorrow? Tomorrow he's going to turn around and go, well, I may have misspoken. And then he's gone for another week, because that's what Mark Carney does when he doesn't like the questions, is he disappears. All right, so last video I want to show you is, you've heard it time and time again. Carney, Trudeau, Freeland, Jagmeet Singh, hell, even Doug Ford. They all keep trying to say that Poilievre is a MAGA guy, Poilievre loves Donald Trump, Poilievre this, Trump that. I mean, I can show you 1,000 different articles, but that's information overload. So how about we just listen to Donald Trump on the topic? Okay.
Unsure about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Well, I think his biggest problem is he's not a MAGA guy, you know? I mean, he's really not. He's not a Trump guy at all. I don't like what he's saying about me. It's just not positive about me.
Poilievre punching back. Mr. President, it is true. I'm not MAGA. I'm for Canada first, always. Additional pushback against Trump is more politically challenging for Poilievre with...
So, again, global, so I cut it off because they're gonna go into unverified BS talking about how, conservatives love Trump, and I'm a moderate, I'm a centralist, but I know a lot of conservatives, and I know a lot of liberals and NDPers. And there's one thing that they all have in common. None of them like Trump. The Globe, CBC, CTV, they're gonna tell you that the conservatives love Trump. They don't. In Canada, here's the misnomer. The Liberals, the NDP, the Greens, they all want to tell you that the Canadian Conservatives are far right-wing conservative. They're not. They're center-right. They are center-right. In Canada is a center-left country at its default. So you cannot get elected in Canada by going to the far right. Now, sure, there's a very small minority of conservatives that are extremists. Okay? But the bulk of the Conservative Party are center-right to right-wing in that general area. They're not extremists. But that's what the Liberals and the NDP and the Greens keep trying to sell. And that's why they keep trying to say Poilievre is a Donald Trump version. He's not. They might have some carryover policies, just like Trudeau and Biden had carryover policies. But that doesn't make Trudeau a Democrat, and that doesn't make Poilievre a Republican. It's fear-mongering is what it is. It's fear-mongering for low-information voters that are not going to look into the facts themselves. So there you have it. Lefties lying. I think we used left-wing media to provide a pretty strong case that Mark Carney cannot be trusted. He is a liar. He is a pathological liar. And as I said, every Saturday I'm going to come out with a new episode of Lefties Lying. It may not always be about Mark Carney, though I have a suspicion a lot of it's going to be about it because he seems to be the worst of the worst. But, it could be Christina Freeland. She's no shrinking violet either when it comes to truth. Could be Justin Trudeau. Could be Elizabeth. Well, no, she'll probably be passed out on the floor somewhere, so let's forget about Elizabeth May. Yeah, so anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you liked the video, leave a like and a subscribe. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike. Always feel free to leave a comment. Don't worry, I don't swing my cane that strongly anymore if I dislike your comment. And yeah, so pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Bye.